Hi, and welcome to our Journey with Parkinson's webinar today, sponsored by Over Parkinson's. I'm Margaret Preston, president of Over Parkinson's, and I'm joined here with Gary Rogliano, founder of Over Parkinson's, and our wonderful team of POP advisors, in no particular order: Joe DeRazio, Bob Scudder, Ken Konopky, and Bill Coursey. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
So our goal today is to share a little bit more about their journey with Parkinson's and also ask them some questions provided by Over Parkinson's as well as our community members. So we'd like to get started, and in no particular order. Let's start with Bill Coursey's story.
I'd like to add, though, I'm delighted to be here with my fellow friends and Parkinson fighters in order to bring this webinar to you.
Bill, if you'd like to share a little bit more about yourself and your journey and your year of diagnosis, etc., let's get started.
Well, I guess we'll start at the beginning. It was a nice sunny summer day in August of 2003, and I was out kayaking in the ocean, and all of a sudden I had a rogue wave take me and the kayak and spun us around, threw us up on the shore, and I was bleeding pretty badly, and several people ran out to me and asked why I was shaking so badly, and I told them, well, after that, wouldn't you be shaking? But it took several weeks, and then the weeks turned into months of diagnoses and several tests to see if I had a compressed spine, because the shaking never went away. And come to find out that I was finally diagnosed with Parkinson's, and they said that Parkinson's was latent in my system, and then the trauma brought it to the surface. They said a lot of times automobile accidents will bring the latent disease to the surface, and so since then I've been taking medication for the disease, but I found that I had the deep brain stimulation surgery in 2012, and that has been remarkable for allowing me to limit the amount of medication that I take, and the effects of it is a mellowing of my symptoms. However, it doesn't affect or assist with loss of balance that I'm having more and more concern with, and freezing episodes, and just the inability to track thought process as evenly as I used to do years ago when I was in sales. And so I have a support group now. Starts with my wife, my immediate family, and then my extended family of buddies here that we've met through a boxing program, Parkinson's patients, and that's been a big help to me, because I think, as everybody out there can attest to, I think you feel so isolated when you've been diagnosed with the disease, but you suddenly realize that those around you that have it understand what you're going through, and they understand your limitations, and they accept those limitations and work with you. And it takes a village to maintain your sense of sanity regarding what the disease throws at you. But I guess it just helps to have events like this, because it allows the public to know that they're not alone in this, and that if you reach out, there's plenty of hands to give you a helping hand up and to push you in directions of programs that are available, like POP. So that's my story.
Bill, share with everybody, are you from Richmond, Virginia, and what did you do prior to your diagnosis?
Well, I was born in Pennsylvania, but I've lived most of my life in Richmond. And prior to the diagnosis, I had worked with certain consulting firms in engineering, and I worked in some sales capacity for a while, but I found that I was shaking so badly that eventually that my wife just opted to allow me to retire and spend my time just developing a lifestyle around the Parkinson's, because you do have to change a lot of your lifestyle to accommodate the lack of ability to do what you used to just do reflexively. Now you have to think about walking through a doorway is a major challenge.
Well, Bill, thank you so much for sharing a little bit more about yourself and your journey and how your life has changed as a result of the diagnosis. Joe, if you'd like to share your story with everybody.
Sure. I'm originally from Pittsburgh. Was in Pittsburgh for 32 years, and then we moved to Virginia because of my work. So we've been in Virginia for 25 years, 26 years. And I'm the proud father of 3 children, 28, 26, and 22. And I've been married to my wife. It'll be 35 years in October. And I'm the proud grandfather of my first grandchild, who will be 1 in August. So they keep us busy.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you. But my journey is a little different. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in February 2015. So fatigue and heat, and kind of diagnosed with MS. And then as time went on, I noticed that things I normally could do, like button buttons or my handwriting, my right side, my mobility was weakened. And I had some experience with Parkinson's because my father had it. So I noticed my father with the shuffling feet in his right side and movement mobility. So I said to my wife, Karen, I said, I know I have Parkinson's. She goes, you're crazy. You have MS. So we went and saw another doctor, neurologist, Dr. Schneider at VCU, and was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And I knew that I had it. But having both diseases kind of is a little confusing because there are some similarities between both diseases. Exhaustion, mobility, things of that nature. Well, the good news is the MS has been put at bay for the past couple of years, which is great news. So it's allowed me to focus on Parkinson's. And my focus with Parkinson's, I do take medication for it, but my focus is exercise and then the socialization aspect. And as Bill said, the support network is extremely important for us that have Parkinson's. The family that we have together through POP and our boxing is so important to making each day as we progress. Because as Bill said, people don't understand what you go through, the challenges that you meet, with the fact that the frustration when you can't button your buttons on your shirt, you have to ask your wife to come over and help you button your shirt is a little frustrating. But, we live with that and we work through that. But it's a great support network. And I always said, there's a reason why things happen. There's a reason why we have Parkinson's and I have MS. And I truly believe my faith has helped me through it as well. Man, upstairs, I was traveling a lot and doing a lot for work. And this has helped me slow down. And I was actually able, fortunately, to take a early retirement. But it's been a blessing in a lot of ways because we've met some great people. And so through hardship and challenges come blessings. And so that's I look at, and I feel like our journey is just beginning, and we'll work through it and have some fun along the way. So
Give you a chance to slow down and
absolutely
really have a good time.
Absolutely.
Get a little bit of golf in.
Just a little bit of golf.
Yeah, just enjoy life,
That's
Just
exactly
a little
right.
bit?
Just a little bit.
When were you diagnosed with the Parkinson?
February or June 2018. June 2018.
I was May 18. We were close together.
Yeah,
Same
we were
doctor.
very close.
Yeah, same doctor.
Exactly. Yeah.
And now you can see your children, the 3 children, and your grandbaby a little bit more,
That's
right?
exactly right.
And
Yeah.
some weddings coming up in the
We
family?
have weddings coming up. My son had his official wedding in May, but he was married last May, but COVID had postponed that until the official wedding was in May. And my daughter's getting married in August, and my youngest son is engaged and getting married in September of 2022. So we have a lot going on.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be
All
home.
good stuff.
Yes, it is.
Definitely.
It is.
And one grandchild waiting for more.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Joe, thank you so much for sharing your story. Ken?
Hi, I'm Ken Konopky, born and raised in New England, educated in New England, worked in New England most of my career until I moved to Richmond, Virginia, because of family and friends and work. I was diagnosed at the age of 53 in January of 2017, not once, but twice. Well, I like to say 3 times because I went to WebMD and diagnosed myself. And when I told my doctor, he said, don't go to WebMD. So now I see Dr. Snyder with VCU, and you start looking back to figure out, when did all this start? Probably in the spring of 2016, I had vertigo. I had foggy brain. I then, as the end of the year went on in 2016, I developed a gated walk and started tremoring on the left side. And I tried to figure it out myself. I go to the gym a lot, so I worked with the instructors there and went through various tests and whatnot to see. And then I decided after Thanksgiving, or after Christmas, I should say, to go to the doctors. And it kind of surprised me because I lived the first 53 years basically healthy, never had a problem, missed a few days of work here and there. My last job, in fact, that I had to leave recently, they were amazed. In 13 years, I'd been out 3 days. And one of the days I figured I could tell them was that I went golfing and I really wasn't sick. And it wasn't a very good golf outing. So I figured that would, they got a lot of smiles, but, and now what do? I have it. I use my faith, like Joe says over here, to guide me through. I educate people. I talk to some folks at VCU occasionally, groups of pharmacy students. I participate where I can just to educate, because I know someday they'll find a cure for this. And that's my story.
Ken, thank you so much.
And you're also a big golfer.
I am a golfer, yes. My swing isn't what it used to be. Sometimes with the tremor, the ball goes the opposite way, but we deal with it and we'll just keep moving forward.
That's where those mulligans come in.
That's where the mulligans come into play,
It's
yes.
still great for you to do, right, Joe? Those
That's
big
exactly
swings
right.
and the movement is great, so you're doing the right thing, Ken. Bob, I'm gonna let you take the mic for our final story before we jump into questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mhm.
Well, I guess it's an interesting story for me anyway. I don't know if that's the rest of you. But, 2015, late 2015, I started leaning slightly to the left. And my wife and primary caregiver and partner, Dougie, had noticed that I was kind of drifting off to the left when we were walking, and we did a lot of walking. And so that's how it started. And as it progressed, and I would be seeing my foot a little bit as well. And obviously it was the left side that was more affected, which is common, left or right, with the disease. I noticed that the more I tried to walk, etc., the better it was. So it's a matter of facing up to the disease and working with it. But eventually my primary care doc said, you do have a little balance problem, and I think I'll send you to one of our vestibular therapists, physical therapists who focus on balance, et cetera, et cetera. And I went to her for several months, and she exercised me, did different things, testing as well as just exercise. And at one point she said, you're looking pretty good. We'll let you go for now. And she did. And I continued to do the exercises, et cetera, and maintained at a level that I could live with. And that's all I did. I never saw a neurologist, et cetera, at that point. Was on no medications. And but eventually it did get to the point where she said, let's look a little deeper. And she sent me to a movement disorder specialist, a neurologist who focuses in that area. And after 2 or 3 visits with him, as you've all experienced, where people move your hands and arms around and have you walk away and come back and all of that. He said, yeah, you've got a lot of the symptoms here. But the interesting thing about Parkinson's is it's not easy to diagnose. And many people don't have a definitive diagnosis. But you might as well say, okay, I've got enough symptoms here. I've got the disease. But eventually I ended up back at VCU with a movement disorder specialist at the Now Center, which maybe some of you have heard about that, but many of you go there. The Now Center is VCU's orthopedics movement specialist, a couple of other areas in Short Pump, west end of town. And I was fortunate enough there to really get a thorough review with neurologists and other specialists who work with them, including the physical therapists who are very much a part of my therapy, and I suppose all of you as well. And it has made a significant difference for me. The formal diagnosis was mid-2017, I would say. And from that, as soon as I was diagnosed, fortunately, the neuropsychologist that I went to, who was one part of the therapy to work me through brain stuff, cognition, et cetera. After we worked together for a couple of sessions, she suggested that I look into an exercise program that she had just heard about. And it turned out, after a couple of months of looking into it, not having any real tight description, et cetera, I was introduced to a group called Rock Steady Boxing. And I started attending their sessions in early 2018. And I've been going there average of 3 times a week ever since. Interestingly enough, I'm at something like 475 sessions with them at this point. So it makes a difference, a huge difference. And, during the pandemic, it's one of those things where, I'd say, am I going to sit home or go do something? And it was about a 15-minute drive to their studio, the Rock Steady Boxing studio. And I found myself going 4, 5, 6 times a week. And as Joe has brought up, one of the big things with those groups, et cetera, is that not only the physical activity, et cetera, but the socialization aspect, which for me is a very significant part of my life. And a good group, among them, these guys. And so I still go as often as I can. And it works out to be 4, 5, 6 times a week. And it has made a tremendous difference for me. I think if I hadn't had Rock Steady Boxing or another program that you guys have mentioned, it would make I would be significantly less capable of managing my symptoms. And that's pretty much my story, really. I've always been active, but this really has made a significant difference in my activity.
But you bring up a good point in the conversation, the difficulty in being diagnosed with Parkinson.
Yes.
It's more of a clinical study, right?
Yes.
I think what we know about the disease is that no two are alike, much like snowflakes. So I think that just adds to the complexity that the neurologists have to deal with in terms of symptoms and identifying what's Parkinson's or what's something else that looks like Parkinson's. So, Bob, before we move on to our Q&A session, share with everybody what you did prior to your diagnosis and your first chapter.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Spend a couple of minutes.
First chapter. There's several first chapters. Well, I am a dentist by training, and upon my entrance to dental school, I had the opportunity to look into a military reserve program, a Navy reserve program, with a commission at that time as an ensign in the United States Navy, which I was all through school, and very much enjoyed that. Went on active duty several summers in a row, and when I graduated from school, I was assigned to a clinic in San Francisco, California. And soon after that, I decided I really wanted to go to sea. I wanted to experience the real Navy rather than just working in a shoreside clinic. And I got the opportunity to be transferred to an aircraft carrier, the USS Coral Sea. And very shortly after that, we had the great privilege of deploying for a tour off the coast of Vietnam. And I spent almost 10 months on that deployment, which to me was a extremely worthwhile growth experience, as well as the opportunity to make many good friends and actually advance in my own career. So I spent 22 years in the Navy and enjoyed that. My last tour was, I moved more into some of the medical management. My last tour, I was the executive officer of Naval Hospital in Charleston, South Carolina. At that point, a 300-bed family practice teaching hospital. And thoroughly enjoyed that. But since that time, and since I left the Navy, which I regret, I still miss it. It's been, how long? It's been almost 30 years, but do miss it. I have maintained an active lifestyle. My jobs have been managing medical facilities, teaching graduate programs in health administration, and some business subjects that I thoroughly enjoyed. And now fully retired, concentrate on having friends and going to Fox State boxing.
That's great.
We thank you for your military service.
Yeah.
Yes,
absolutely.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Don't let him fool you. He can hit a golf ball. I know Papa's had some of the driving range functions. He can hit a golf ball. He doesn't play, but he can hit it.
I gave it up.
Earlier you mentioned you felt things were tilting. I wasn't sure about the aircraft carrier. That's the whole
That happened on a regular basis. It tilt one way and then the other.
That's right. Well, now that you have had a chance to get to know our advisors, we'd like to jump into the Q&A portion of our time together. As I said in the introduction, Power Over Parkinson's developed some of these questions, and we also received questions from you, our community. And we will go through them as best we can, being conscious of time, and we'll get started. Bob, I think the first one is for you. What do the advisors, Bob, you find is the best exercise or treatment to reduce toe cramping?
I'm not sure how I got this question. But I do have some toe cramping, as many patients with Parkinson's do, and many who do not have Parkinson's. But toe cramping usually ends up being what they call a hammer toe, which is the toe is bent down, so the end of your tip of your toe is what's actually contacting the ground more than anything. But treatment is really around stretching of muscles. It's around what happens in Parkinson's quite frequently is a contracture of muscles, shortening of muscle, if you will. And when you shorten the muscle, you shorten the tendon that attaches that muscle to bone. And toes are little, but no different than any bone. If you have a shortened contracture of that, it interferes with the movement of the joint, et cetera. And in the case of a toe, which has actually 3 little bones in the outer area of it, you end up with what people call, a toe cramping, or some of them call them claw toes. I've heard that term. I don't like it very well.
No.
But the treatment, a lot of it is based on how do you stretch those muscles. And the main muscle of the foot, if you will, in the foot itself is the plantar fascia. On the bottom of the foot is that long area that is mainly muscle. that it tends to start to contract, etc. So the idea here is to lengthen the muscles, to exercise the muscles, either through massage, obviously, through different exercises that hard to describe here, but where you're actually putting the foot on the ground and pushing down on it to actually stretch muscle.
Elongate the muscles.
It's the toe cramping is not necessarily extremely painful. What was never for me is, I guess it is for some people, but get in there and help your movement. We do it with our hands, we do it with our wrists, etc. I don't know how many of us would do that with your feet, but it's very, very important to do that.
Great.
So that's a short description.
Thanks, Bob. I've got one more for you, and then I'll give you a little break.
Okay.
We'll jump into the rest of the gentlemen. Bob, can you share a little bit about some of the programs you found effective related to soft voice?
Yes, I can. And you can hear my voice here gets a little scratchy at times already, but the muscles, if you will, you can call them muscles, with our vocal cords. Parkinson's can affect those as well, cause some constriction of the vocal cords, which reduces our volume of our speech. And it's very important to go through, as I found when I first started in my treatment. The loud therapy was one of the first things with a PhD in speech pathology. Very interesting man here at the Now Center. And I had visited, it was 3 times a week. I would go for 6 weeks. And the main function and the main activity is exercising your voice. And it's the loud therapy, if you will, is exactly that. It's to train you to speak fully and vocally, which is not the common thing we want to do as we develop the disease. It's mainly we want to speak very quietly, and that doesn't work. So loud therapy is and for as long as you can. I would exercise that with the therapist that I work with. And it was, but like I say, it was a 6-week program, and I go back every 6 months for a review and to monitor my progress. It's like anything else, we need to practice, and that practice involves daily voice, loudness, activity. The that I mentioned, I won't do it again here. I'm sorry for that.
Oh, no, I too took that course with Dr. Beach, and I think the important part is you don't even know you're talking loud.
No, that's right.
As a speaker, we didn't even know. We don't even know it until it comes to your attention and you realize it.
Mm-hmm. Very, very, very,
You
very
touched
true.
on it being exercise, and you also touched on if you don't fine tune it, you lose it, just like with any muscle.
That's
you,
correct.
If you stop exexercising, you'll lose that muscle.
That's
Same
very,
with
very
voice.
true.
So I like your explanation of that, Bob. Thank you.
I just can't
I would say one more thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
I do most of my exercise of my voice in the car
Yeah.
by myself when I'm
It's a
driving.
great time to do it, right? Well, thank you, Bob, for letting us ask you a couple questions. Bill, we'd like to ask you a question specific to DBS. You touched on it in your bio and your introduction, but share with us a little bit more about when you had it, the outcome, how you overcome probably a lot of nerves going into it. So share with us your experience with DBS.
Well, DBS for me started with a lot of YouTube reviewing of the surgical procedure, and I almost talked myself out of getting the procedure because of all the complexities of it. But essentially, it lasted for about a 2 to 3 hour period, of which they took 90 seconds worth of drill time in 2 different directions of the brain, and they inserted a long metal lead wire on both sides of the brain, and then that was connected to a battery pack. And the effects of the surgery I immediately experienced was quite beneficial, because I was shaking pretty violently and I was off all medication for the surgery, and they said that I might experience what they call the honeymoon effect, and that was before they actually hooked up the whole system. Just the stimulation of the brain during the surgical procedure was enough to make my shaking stop. I was having no issues with balance at that point. And I mean, I was living life large for probably the first couple of weeks. And then they began the process of having me come in, and they tuned up the system, and they started the system up, and I started shaking again prior to the actual start of the system. And the doctor said, watch this, and he took this monitoring machine and he started pressing a lot of buttons, and my hand was shaking pretty badly, and then all of a sudden it just stopped. He said, what do you think about that? And I just about almost broke into crying, because I was so relieved and didn't have that muscle issue of the firing of the muscles and the non-stop shaking. And then he said, now watch this. And he pressed the buttons again. And I started shaking. And I said, that's not funny. but he was demonstrating how I could get away from taking medication and get relief from the violent shaking and dyskinesias that I was experiencing. And so I had my surgery in 2012. And my only regret is that I didn't have the surgery sooner than that. I went about 9 years of constant medication, and the medication, which I think these gentlemen will probably all attest to, the more medication you take, the more relief you get for a while, but then you begin to have dyskinesias, which are the violent shaking episodes and extreme limb movements. And I was waking my wife up on a regular basis before I had my deep brain stimulator put in, because I was violently shaking at night in bed. And so I'm a big proponent of deep brain stimulation surgery. I think everybody that has the need for reducing the shaking should definitely look into it.
Thank you, Bill. Moving on to another type of treatment, we touched on DBS. Our next question is for Joe. In addition to DBS medication, what else can I do to preserve my quality of life if I have Parkinson's
Sure,
disease?
it's a great question. You know, the one thing that I've learned through this experience is two things. One is exercise. Exercise in the form of high intensity workouts, which Pop is a big advocate of. And as Bob mentioned, rock steady boxing, where you can push yourself as much as you can. And, you know, the one thing that I've learned is that I'll go to a workout feeling sluggish, you know, not feeling really good. After the workout, I feel tremendous. I mean, you walk out of there just feeling so much better. That applies to golf. When, in fact, this past Sunday, I told my wife, I said, we were going golfing. I said, I just don't feel right this morning. I just feel sluggish and just don't have it. At the end of 18 holes of golf walking, felt fantastic. So I'm a big proponent of exercise, and whether it's high intensity, but you push yourself as hard as you can push yourself, and a variety of exercises, whether a heavy bag, speed bag, agility, push-ups, squats, sit-ups, things of that nature, just to stay with it and intensify as much as you possibly can, I think makes a big impact. You know, the other thing we talked about it that I think has impacted me is the socialization aspect. Getting together with people that can relate to what you have, and I think Bill or someone mentioned it here earlier, people that are experiencing the same things that you're experiencing, I think is so important to share your stories, to learn more, and to have that family atmosphere. In fact, yesterday at the boxing, one of the boxers came up to me and said, it is so nice that COVID is somewhat behind us with the vaccination process, because I'm back together with my second family. And it is so true. I mean, we've become like family together, and supporting one another. And it makes all the difference in the world. And I want to thank Pop. All the events you sponsor and have for us, that we can get out and do different things, whether it's at the driving range or the bowling alley, those things mean a lot. And it's just fun to take that couple hours and to be together, to have some fun and to talk to each other and things of that nature. So I think exercise and socialization, doing different functions has been important. And the other thing I'll mention is, if you think you have Parkinson's, go find out. I know that people are hesitant to get that diagnosis because it affects their lives.
Yeah.
But I know people that I think have Parkinson's that haven't addressed it. The sooner you address it, the better you'll be, because there's others like you. So don't wait. Act upon it and find out if you do or not.
Yeah, and the good news is if you do, you touched on the community right here in Richmond and beyond that you can be a part of.
Exactly.
But with that, Joe, you have a strong opinion about what you should tell people in your family
Yes.
about
Yes.
if you're diagnosed positive.
Absolutely. Yeah. My father, as I mentioned earlier, had Parkinson's and didn't tell us right away. And the one thing that I highly recommend is to share it with your family. They want to support you. They want to be your support network because they care about you and they love you.
Right.
And I think that, if you get diagnosed with it, sit down with your family, take the time to talk about what you have, and they'll support you. And then you can experience all the other support networks around you too. I think it's extremely important. Yeah.
Well, you touched on a good segue and a portion of the next question that's to Ken. On those days when you just don't want to go out and golf or go exercise, how do you push yourselves to kind of get over that hump and get out on the days that you just don't feel like getting out and exercising and moving?
I can relate to Joe. There's been many times where I'll wake up in the morning planning to go to the gym and have to drag myself there. One time I actually sat in Starbucks parking lot and the gym was next door, and I was like, should I get a Starbucks coffee or should I exercise? So I did exercise and I felt so much better when I got out of there. I did get the Starbucks coffee, by the way, but that was after the workout. I just have a positive attitude. I know what the consequences could be if I don't exercise. During COVID, I was scratching my head and I couldn't go to the gym. So I had to think of other things to do. So I have a lot of trails that I live near, and I would take the dog on these 3-mile hikes. And I'd come back and my wife's like, where you been? I'm like, we're just going up and down hills and pushing ourselves. I run the Monument 10K a couple of times. Didn't win, but that's another story. And just always keeping busy and looking for ways through POP has really helped me with the exercise programs that you guys put together, whether it's the golfing or the bowling. I've asked for ice skating, but nobody's interested in that. Maybe someday. You what?
That might be a little tough.
We'll get the choreography.
Yeah, and I missed some things, and I kind of get mad. Because I want to be part of it, and I want to meet more people that have Parkinson's, so we can relate to each other and ask each other questions and what medication are you on, and et cetera, real life events, and what are you doing at home that's different. And I have night, I guess they're tremors at night, where I wake up and I've had to be put on a new medication. I know this is going off the subject a little bit, where I've fallen out of bed several times and actually have a rail there now. And luckily I'm in good physical condition, because if not, I could have really hurt myself, like walking downstairs and climbing through windows. These are things, they're vivid dreams. And I'm on meds now, and my doctor did say it's a good thing that you exercise. But I like to exercise more than my physical, my mental, keeping busy, keeping the brain. And we do a lot of exercises in class where we're throwing a ball to each other, have to catch it. So we have to use our brains going up and down stairs. I never thought about it, but anytime I walk up and down stairs now, which I like to do, I actually have to think about what I'm doing. It doesn't come natural anymore. So I have to be really careful, hold on to the rail, and I've had to make adjustments.
Well, being challenged with the question, should I exercise or go to Starbucks? I think everyone can resonate with that.
I went
So
to Starbucks
Parkinson's
first,
aside,
actually.
we
Yeah,
can
no.
all resonate with that question.
Let's skip the donut.
Bob, I'd like to turn to you. What was the process you went through in finding a neurologist that was the best fit for you?
Okay, it's kind of a continuation of my first comments
Yeah.
about my care. I suppose from initial diagnosis to actually finding the neurologist that I ended up working with, it was a 3-month process, I want to say. I talked to 3 different neurologists. I talked to a couple of physical therapists who work with the neurologist. And finally, again, I mentioned the Now Center at VCU, which is I think is a wonderful collaboration of specialists who look at all aspects of the disease. And that's where I ended up, and I just made an appointment with whoever I was going to have an appointment with. I didn't take the time at that point to try and seek out an individual therapist, neurologist, and I'm very happy with Dr. Testa, who is the neurologist that I see. I only see her once a year by her choice. I'd see her once a week if I like to go and have that interaction with the therapist. And I do see her nurse practitioner who works with her on the alternate 6-month appointment. And so I feel I'm getting good care.
Yeah.
I feel I'm progressing. I'm maintaining a lack of progression in the disease process as much as I can. And I go back to, again, the physical activity. Without that, I think I would not be in nearly as good a condition as I am.
Right.
If I may add to that, I go to the Now Center VCU for both Parkinson's and MS. And it was interesting because I see Dr. Schneider for Parkinson's and Dr. Goldman for MS. And I have an MS appointment, and I mentioned because fatigue is part of MS as well. So I mentioned, she asked me how I was doing. I was experiencing fatigue in the afternoons. She goes, there's a drug we can put you on, amantadine. So she steps out of the room and goes to see Dr. Schneider. And talks to Dr. Schneider about prescribing amantadine for me, and would that be okay? And they both conversed together, and she came back in and said, we can put you on amantadine.
Yeah.
So I think having that all
Great.
inclusive was really nice.
That's when care works,
That's
right?
exactly
When
right.
there's
Mhm.
connectivity between disciplines.
Yes.
And it's also, you notice they have a single file on you that they all access.
Absolutely.
So everybody's up to date on everything that goes on with you.
Yeah.
That's really great.
I think my dad can touch on one aspect of it. I guess finding a movement disorder specialist versus a more general neurologist. I know you face
Absolutely.
certain challenges when you don't have a movement disorder specialist versus a general neurologist who doesn't know as much of the intricacies about the disease.
Right.
And I think he finally found someone, Dr. Scudder at VCU, who is a movement disorder specialist and can weigh Parkinson's a little bit in more specificity than a general neurologist.
Yes.
So,
Exactly.
With Bob had touched upon, the Now Center at least can reach all the different disciplines. So the voice, this, that, the brain, every piece there.
It's all under one roof,
Right.
which is even better.
Bill, I'd like to turn to you. In addition to these doctor's appointments that we're referencing and all the wonderful doctors that are at VC, what other therapies, and perhaps it's also VCU and other universities that you attend to, what other therapies have you found impactful in mitigating your symptoms?
I feel that physical therapy has been a additional input to my recovery or dealing with Parkinson's. I know the owner of the Rocksteady Box here in Richmond that I attend has offered to assist me on a one-to-one basis because she's a physical therapist. And I know that she'll put me through a regimen of extra exercises that I can do at home, that sort of thing, to improve not only my going to boxing class, but improve my general daily activities. And she's helped with massage therapy. When I started developing an issue with my hip, and I think it was because of the shaking that had been involved for so many years. And then I found that with the massage therapy, she got me over the hurdles that I was experiencing. And I think physical therapy, in addition to Rocksteady Boxing, in addition to pop activities, I think make you accountable for what you need to be doing on a regular basis to maintain and to monitor the Parkinson's. And I know that on days, just going back to what Ken said, on days when I've awakened and had a hard time getting out of bed, I've thought to myself, I'm not going to go into class today, but I know that if I don't go into class, as soon as the class is over, my phone starts ringing, and it's like one of my buddies here wondering where I was, that sort of thing. And so I think any additional therapy and exercise is helpful in providing accountability and providing you a framework to get through the day, starting with brushing your teeth in the morning to taking your contacts out at night, just as assisted by any additional exercise activity.
So I think you touched on one of the ancillary benefits of the community is holding one another accountable, right? And getting that phone call. So that's fantastic. So we've got a few more minutes. So I'd like to run through the last set of questions, gentlemen. The next one is for you, Joe. This came from a community member. I struggle with my balance and I'm not sure what I can do to help mitigate my instability and likelihood of falling. Any insight?
Sure. The one thing that I found is exercises that help with balance. And I would preface this by saying, depending on what stage you're at with your balance, these can be done against the wall. So to brace yourself. So a couple of the exercises that I like doing for balance, we call drinking birds. Remember the drinking bird where you're coming up and down to your foot. So you can do that as best you can, but always having a brace next to you to balance yourself. Another one is just standing on one foot. Just kind of, you could box and stand on one foot. If you want to elevate it to a level, get a pad or a Bosun ball and stand on that, and that'll help your balance. But again, always taking precautions to not push yourself to the extent where you could lose your balance and fall. Another exercise is the way you walk, putting your toe to heel to toe, and keep walking like that is another good exercise.
That's great.
I think the other thing is just focusing on one particular object as you walk, taking your time and just staying focused. But don't push yourself to the point where you're gonna fall. So push yourself as much as you can, but work on those exercises on a regular basis. I think will help your balance and walking. The one thing, and I think Ken mentioned, is going up and down the steps. I won't take my grandson up and down the steps. So knowing your limitations too, I just mentally just will not do that. Carry him up or bring him down, just because I just don't feel it's safe enough. So just understanding your limitations as well.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
Ken, what do your friends and family do to help you cope with your diagnosis and disease management?
Well, besides providing good support, even when I was working, I always built a team around me who I could go to and talk and trust. So I've done that either with the doctors like Dr. Snyder. I could text him a message and within an hour, he's got an answer for me. It's not 3 days later. So I'm very fortunate. I've done some physical therapy, different types of exercises. Some of them Joe mentioned. They also give me positive feedback. There are days when I'm just bummed out about something and they uplift, whether it could be these guys or friends. And they're just good to have an ear to listen to what's going on. And putting that all together is what moves me forward.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to sit at home curled up in a little ball and, woe to me. I've always been a go-getter, and this is my full-time job now.
Yeah.
This is what I do. This is my focus. And so I'm not going to waste it.
Yeah. That talking point was great. What a great takeaway, that saying it's my full-time job, because I think that resonates with a lot of people. Exercise alone. And then of course you have all the other pieces, appointments, etc. But I think that was a good takeaway from that, Ken. Gary, I've got a question for you. Do you experience loss of taste or smell, which is a common but little known symptom of Parkinson's disease? And if so, what do you do to combat these symptoms effect on food apathy?
There's actually two or three pieces to that. One is, at first I didn't recognize it, and slowly began to realize it. I probably lost 90% of my taste and smell. My daughter would bake a cake and put in a whole jar of vanilla, I wouldn't taste it. Or honest to God, a whole jar of garlic into something, I do not taste it one little bit at all. So it's a little bit of frustration because you're eating a hamburger, it feels like or steak, feels like you're eating straw, but it's there. Second piece to that, which is very, very interesting about the brain, Dove bars. If you're familiar with them, it's a deep chocolate and vanilla ice cream. I used to eat them a lot and love them. If I eat one now and bite into it, I can actually taste it. Somehow I convince my brain. I can actually taste the Dove bar as I'm eating, which is really, really very interesting. We've heard of that. I think the neuroplasticity or something like that. Because the last piece to that is I've also had difficulty swallowing, which is kind of coupled all together. My swallowing has gotten to the point where the thrust from my throat is just not doing enough to get the food to pass forward. So that's another thing to work on, which kind of couples all that. So my difficulty is all in this area at the moment. But the part about the Dove bar is really, really very interesting.
And you all can get away with eating those because you're working out so much.
Yeah, we need to replenish our bodies.
That's right.
Right. The Dove bars is
Protein
very
and ice
important.
cream.
I'll stop on the
Recipe for people parties.
That's right. So if anybody has a important takeaway from this whole entire webinar, is go out and get the Dove bars.
Get the Dove bars.
Ken, I'm going to jump over to you again. I would be interested in knowing, this came from our community member as well, interested in knowing what Parkinson's medications the advisors are currently, and we can start with Ken and you all can jump and share a couple seconds each, what medications the advisors currently use, realizing of course that all folks are in different places with the disease.
Yeah, well, of course, we're probably all using carbidopa, levodopa. A lot of people have problems pronouncing that. We'll call it Seniment. I take that actually 6 times a day, every 4 hours. I've tried extended release, it didn't work. So I worked with my doctor, and right now that's what I'm doing. Because I might have some off time, I also wear a patch. It's called a Nupro transdermal patch that is delivers a dopamine agonist to my body, and it stimulates my dopamine receptors. This has been very, very good for me. There are side effects, which my doctor always asks me, are you gambling? Are you, not more than usual, I say. Wait till the casino opens and then we'll see what happens. But so there are side effects, but luckily I'm not facing any of those. And I'd say right now I'm stable. I see my, doctor every 6 months, but if I need him, he's there, which is awesome.
So we'll just, if you all want to answer, Joe, if you want to run down the line, spend a few seconds sharing where you are with your medication.
Sure, I'm stable right now. I use the carbidopa as well. I take 4 tablets a day. And I mentioned earlier about amantadine for fatigue. So I take 1 to 2. I started out with taking 2, but now I'm down to 1, which seems to get me through the fatigue portion. And it's those 2 are the primary drugs that I take for Parkinson's.
It's I take 800 milligrams of the dopamine, Cinemet, 4 times a day. I take 200 milligrams
Yeah.
4 times a day.
Sure.
So 2 tablets,
Mhm.
and then I take an extended release one in the evening when I go to bed,
Mhm.
and that's the extent of my medications.
Yeah.
That's
That's
good.
great. Bring us home, Bill.
Because of the deep brain stimulator, I'm on very little medication right now. And I just basically take enough to allow the body to remember what the medication can do in the event that the deep brain stimulator goes south, as it did about a year ago. And it one of the wires frayed and it stopped functioning, and I started shaking pretty badly, but I had the medication to fall back on.
Well, this is probably a great question to wrap up with, and one of my favorite questions of the entire morning. We'll start with Joe and go down the line. What are 3 words that you would use to best describe yourself?
Caring, competitive, and driven.
Very good. Social, caring, and active.
Motivated, logical, and humorous.
Probably caring, sensitive, and obsessive.
Obsessive.
Dad, you want to add 3 more to the end?
Competitive, motivator, and caring.
Very good. Well, gentlemen, we can't thank you enough for being with us today. I'm sure our listeners have walked away with a lot of interesting insight about you and insight that they might be able to ask their doctors or apply to their journey with Parkinson's. So thank you so much for being with us today. I had touched on in the introduction that these gentlemen are all POP advisors. And what does that mean? That means they are on call. We have a section on our website, poweroverpd.org, that if you are in need to speak with someone, if you're newly diagnosed and want to just have a pairing, want to establish friendship and have someone to help navigate your diagnosis, you can speak with any one of these gentlemen. Also, if you're have had the disease for quite some time and simply need to speak with someone, they are here to help you. So again, poweroverpd.org. You can learn a little bit more about them in written form and their stories, and also reach out to us if you're interested in pairing up with one of these gentlemen. I'd also like to note that this webinar is also recorded, so if you'd like to rewatch it, if you've missed something and didn't jot it down fast enough, it'll be located on our YouTube channel, Power Over Parkinson's, as well as Facebook. And then lastly, a few upcoming Power Over Parkinson's events. We have this Friday, Blues, Brews, and Barbecue at Discovery Village in the West End. At 4:30, just a great fundraiser to come out, have some fun for Power Over Parkinson's, and we thank our friends at Discovery Village for doing that on behalf of Power Over Parkinson's. A couple PAL events, our Parkinson's Activity League, July 13th, another outdoor exercise class with James Vidrine from Fox Rehabilitation. And August 10th, we are finally back inside at River City Roll, where we started our PAL League before COVID. So we will be bowling August 10th. So we'll remove ourselves from the summer heat and be back inside bowling. And finally, September 20th is our charity golf tournament, 2nd year. We're excited to see everybody out at Hunting Hawk. So if you're a golfer or know someone who is, send them to our website. We'd love to have them participate in the day. So again, thank you so much for listening to this webinar. And gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much.
Thank you.